Miguel, you were at the Emirates yesterday. If you look back to last season, the injuries that they've got at the moment, it would have spelled the end of their season, wouldn't it? But it feels like after the transfer window that they've had, we don't seem to be focusing on those injuries so much and more on Arsenal's squad depth. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the obvious one is Odegaard. I mean, had he gone down in the way he did yesterday, last season, or any of the previous three, really, it would have been seen as a disaster. I mean, like, we remember actually it was at this exact time last year, because it was just after the September international break, that he had the ankle injury away with Norway. And there was real worry within Arsenal. Whereas now they could just, I mean, even on the day itself, they just carried on as they were. And I think it is going to be a big thing this season, because I asked Arteta this after the game. Obviously, a big mission of this window was not just buying a forward and giving themselves a different option there, but actually adding real depth. And that is a specific response to the fact that the Champions League is now a parallel league season. So it's going to be very difficult. I mean, like, the strength of Liverpool last year, say, was having Salah and Van Dijk on the pitch. I think they were the two players with the most minutes up until March, when Liverpool pretty much won the league. And they had a very strong first 11 and a pretty strong 14 to 16. Whereas I think Arteta's thinking now is you're going to need much more to maintain the same level if you have games every 3 days, which they pretty much do now until February. And also, it's funny actually as well, I was talking to people at Arsenal yesterday who felt a little bit aggravated, maybe with some media, about, like myself, about the reaction to the Liverpool Arsenal game 2 weeks ago, because they felt basically, you know, there was obviously a lot of talk about whether they're, whether that was a psychological blow in a title race, whether it showed they can't get over the line, because they felt it was just two teams showing each other respect, settled by a wonder goal. But Arsenal really feel they're there, and I think that depth points to that. Of course, I mean, the proof will be as the season goes on, but it does feel a pretty significant evolution from last season.
Evolution. Riyadh, welcome back, by the way. It's been far too long.
I didn't want to point this out, Darmish, but I think I was actually on the last show of the previous carnation, so let's hope it's not an omen.
Well, you're most welcome. You're most welcome. You were at the Emirates as well.
I was.
Yesterday. Miguel mentions evolution. Is that how you're seeing it? Because if you look at the injuries, he just mentioned Odegaard, but Saliba's not there. Mm-hmm. Saka's injured. Ben White wasn't there. There are a couple of others who I've probably forgotten as well. And yet, seamlessly, they seem to be rolling on.
I think that's the key point, isn't it? The squad depth there. And Arteta's made a big play on wanting to have two players for every position. But you look at that bench yesterday, where they're able to give Declan Rice a little bit of a breather, still completely dominate the midfield. They've got Trossard, they've got Martinelli on the bench. They've got real depth. And as you say there, they've still got Saka to come back in. They've still got Saliba, who are two of the absolute key players in that squad. So Havertz as well. So they've got real depth, and I agree with what Miguel's saying there about an evolution. I think we've still got the same question about whether or not they're going to be. They've got no shortage of creativity, and it's about putting those chances away. And Gyökeres, he's got 3 goals. He scored another one yesterday. He, for me, seems to answer that question. But I think we're still seeing him at about 80%. I don't think they've come close to unlocking that yet. It's going to take time adapting to the speed of the Premier League. But I think what I noticed yesterday in the second half, and it's why I was actually surprised they took him off after about 70 minutes. In that second half, we were really starting to see a sign that with Eze and Madueke, he was starting to build an understanding, a relationship. There was the move where he's actually started it from over towards the left of the area. He's worked it into Madueke. He's overlapped it and then crashed it against the outside of the post. They're starting to become that understanding. If they can nail that, this team, this squad, they've got a seriously good chance. And of course, we've had the running commentary of the last few years that Arsenal, Arteta, they're destined for second place forevermore. This group does look different. If it falls short, it will not be down to squad depth. And again, we'll see what the situation is with Odegaard. They don't think it's serious. He'll be having an assessment today. You can't take a guy like that out. But when Nwaneri came in, there was no drop off at all. They had the options to be able to handle it. We'll probably talk more in depth about Zubimendi in a minute, but I look at him as that's the player who is quite possibly going to be the entire difference to their season. I think he drives everything.
Charlotte, we keep talking about squad depth. Now, in the Telegraph, it says, the subdeck here, Arteta new boys give fearsome depth, but will it be enough? The bookies still make Liverpool the favourites, but when you look at the Arsenal squad, is it the best squad in the league now? The most rounded and the most covering every single position now?
Quite possibly, because if you look at you could get a starting 11 and then you could have a B team, as it were. And someone said to me the other day, if you look at the B team, they're good enough to compete like nearly at the top of the table, definitely mid-table as it is anyway. So if they can get, I think the most important thing is going to be how they rotate players, like giving Declan Rice a rest yesterday in terms, and it's Zubimendi and Marino, we were just talking about it as well. They've started 174 games together. They've already got that understanding. They've managed to build a team here who have already seemed to be clicking. As Riath just said, the front three, this is the first time that they'd all played together. It didn't look like that. So in terms of squad depth and the way that these players, across both, if you were to put them in an A and a B team, if the way that these players are already connecting across the whole squad, I think that's going to give them a real advantage. But I don't think, as Riaz said, that it might be not be the squad depth that sees them come short. I think there's a mentality, not an issue, but I think that's going to have to be something that they're going to have to really get used to get them over the line, because this is a team that has continually finished second. So that those little bits to get them to beat Liverpool and to come first, I think that's going to be the difference rather than the depth. I think obviously the depth, they've got 2 players for every position now, so that excuse now is totally gone.
And just on that as well, actually, I mean, Arteta suddenly has a new challenge, although one he probably likes, which is maintaining the sort of chemistry and energy and vibrancy that you need for a title challenge, but also, and suddenly, he's got to tell, 11 players every week that they're not playing, and ensuring they feel involved. Like, look at Lewis Skelly say. I mean, he was someone who was so central to Arsenal last season, and he's barely played in the game so far. In fact, like, England was his first start of the season. But I think in response to that, it is a challenge for Arteta, but he's going to be able to just point to, well, look at the calendar. If they're playing every 3 games, like he mentioned himself yesterday, you're going to get to January, and if you've had 14 or 15 players all the time, they're going to be exhausted. Where the point of this now is, as you mentioned, yesterday he brought out Rice for a while. Rice ended up coming on. But I think there'll be a lot more rotation between matches, and it's about kind of just keeping them at that level.
Which should help them on the injuries, because that narrative plagued them, didn't it? Oh, the injuries, like we said before, like that list of players you mentioned, was incomprehensible that last season you could list that name of players and think that Arsenal wouldn't be panicked about those players being out, but there was absolutely no issue with them being out yesterday. Everyone that replaced those injured players stepped up. It was a straightforward victory for Arsenal, probably could have been more. So I think that already shows progression from where they were at last season.
Sorry, I don't want to just cut in there, Dash, but I think it's really interesting what Miguel says there about keeping them all happy, because I think objectively and being rational about it, there are going to be enough games to go around, but it never works that way, does it? You will always have players who are unhappy, and Lewis Skelly is the case in point. It looks very hard in this current system to drop Calafiori, but
yeah, and they've got Hincapie as well.
Exactly. So he's going to be looking at how, obviously we'll probably talk about the Kobbie Mainoo situation later, but players in their nature, they won't look ahead and say, you know what, I'm going to be your man for November. I'm going to be your man for January. I'll get my games in. They won't look at it that way. They want to be in now.
Hasn't Gary Neville actually spoken about that? Was Ferguson's great strength in terms of managing rotation, that he would say to players, right, you're not going to be used much in October, but November is the game for you, son. And they'd go and get themselves pumped for that, even though actually they're being left out in exactly this sort of situation.
Nuno did it with Forest last season. In pre-season, he basically told, this is my starting pool, and this is like you have a huge impact to play in this squad, but you are going to be used off the bench, and look how it helped them. So I think it obviously can be done, but it depends on the temperament of the player and what it is that they want.
And that's where I suppose the manager's psychological man management is so important. Now, Arteta, supposed to be fair, I mean, this has been mocked at times, but he is obviously so obsessed with kind of actually how you psychologically manage a team and all the little tricks. So you'd have to assume he's thought about this exact problem a fair bit.
You mentioned Zubimendi. We'll come to him in a minute, Riath, but I think something that epitomises the current Arsenal is Noni Madueke. Now, Ryan Taylor, in his verdict piece in the Daily Star, has said, look, just 2 months ago, a petition titled #No to Madueke began trending online. Now we're in a position where we might even be talking about Bukayo Saka having to fight for his place at Arsenal. I know people might say that that's quite outlandish, but the fact of the matter is that Noni Madueke is performing like he did for England in midweek, and now he's bringing that form to Arsenal. And the character that he's shown after all of the outrage almost when Arsenal signed him.
Yeah, for full disclosure, I did do an item in a column saying that I thought it was a very overpriced transfer and expressing some cynicism. I would add I did not sign a petition, but he was fantastic yesterday, and I think we've seen this with him. We've seen this with him before. When he's hot, he's smoking hot. He has that brilliant trait of being incredibly direct, incredibly aggressive. He gets the ball and it's right, there's the space, kill. You know, everything is what we want to see in terms of attacking football. I sometimes, particularly at Chelsea, I would watch him and question some of the judgments he would make. There were a lot more blind alleys than we saw than we saw yesterday. I think an element of good luck came from being up against a natural centre-half playing at left-back. But even when Neco Williams got brought over to left-back, he beat him from a standing start as well. I mean, he looks fantastic. He's incredibly exciting. I think the challenge for him this season is to not blow hot and cold. Everyone's going to face that challenge in football, that ability to try and be consistent, and we've not seen it from him before. But that was really good yesterday.
And in the same spirit of admission, I wrote a few times actually in pre-season that why didn't Arsenal just take the Gyökeres money and the Madueke money and go all in for Isak as well, because they did seem to miss that player of like that extra level. And now, I mean, it might be ironic that we're actually looking at it from the, especially given all we've said this morning about depth. If actually it's that depth and having two players and that willingness to alternate can prove a difference in the title race. But of course, we might be talking completely different today after maybe Isak comes on for Liverpool and scores twice or whatever.
Yeah, one thing I'd say about it as well, just on the Saka side of things, we're talking about a guy who does it repeatedly. Saka has, there's no question mark whatsoever about his quality and his abilities to sustain it. So I think it's going to be a great scenario for Arteta to have when Saka's back and he's fully fit. Have these two guys if they're both burning hot at the same time. But at this stage, it's very early with Madueke. It's just that the signs are so encouraging, and I had him as the best player on the pitch on the pitch yesterday. I love watching that guy get the ball and have a run. But you know, when we see him play against a few more natural fullbacks, we'll have a fuller idea.